Hello, my name is H.E. Rozelle, and this is the introduction to the Benton County series part 2, the why. Why would any comfortable and reasonably happy retiree who has no thirst for accolades take on a project involving hours, hundreds of hours of research and work to write over 300,000 words for an audience of maybe a dozen or two? It sounds crazy, doesn't it? Well, I guess the first thing to get out of the way is I need to tell you I am a proud, liberal, tree-hugging progressive. Damn, they didn't even want to hear what I had to say. Crap, that went half my audience. Well, at least you stayed. Thank you. Well, for a liberal, you may know that the classical definition for a liberal is it kind of boils down to no king, that people should have the right to life, liberty, and property. And that's the traditional, classical, simplified definition for a liberal. So, what's wrong with that? Today, we expanded a little bit to include that minorities should also be free from the tyranny of democracy in the majority. That small groups, just because you get a new government, it goes into Washington, they can't persecute small groups. They have the same rights that everybody has, guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. Women should have the same rights as men have. They should have the same opportunities that men have. An unarmed black man shouldn't be killed by the government and there be no consequences. I mean, doesn't that make sense? If they can shoot an unarmed black guy, they can shoot an unarmed Catholic. They can shoot an unarmed holiness. So gay folks should have the same rights and protections under the law as straight folks. Now, if a man feels more comfortable wearing women's clothes, more power to him. It don't bother me one bit. Let him wear the women's clothes. It's none of my business. It all boils down to what we believe today, us liberals, is that you shouldn't hate a whole group. You shouldn't just hate a whole group, one whole religion. Hate all gays, hate all Muslims. Let's just agree to hate one son of a bitch at a time. Okay, now my definition for a tree hugger is easy. It just boils down to, I believe in science and reason. I'd like to have a t-shirt. Science and that little hand thing, reason. Science and reason. Scientists don't always get it right the first time, but they will work. They will, by not getting it right, it helps science because the next scientist won't go down that same path. This is a beautiful thing, the scientific method. It carries us a long way. And there's been a long running feud between Christianity or religion and science. There's a lot of, especially fundamentalist Christians that think science is evil somehow. Anything new comes up, they don't, stay away from it. But science doesn't care. It just keeps going along its merry way. It just searches for facts. It searches for truth. And it likes to believe things that can be proven. Do experiments on and use the scientific method. Now, as for being a progressive, I believe that a society works best when the money comes up from a well-educated, healthy, and financially secure working class. You know, I don't think that the best society prospers long when the money trickles down from the super rich billionaires that, you know, that avoid all taxes that they can, that are cutting programs like are being cut today, you know, Medicaid and food aid and things like that, so that they can keep their tax breaks. Every country in the world is looking for that sweet spot between capitalism and socialism. Unfettered capitalism is every time it brings booms and busts, and the money moves from the poor and the working people up to the rich. It happens every time. Read your history. And when the money moves, so does the workers' rights. You know, they shut down unions. They no raises, longer hours. Read your history. Now, a pure socialist economy, where a small group of party members make all the economic decisions for the whole country, miscalculations are going to be made. And we've seen where millions starved in Soviet Russia and communist China because they made a miscalculation on should we grow food or should we, invest that money into factories. And that's in the history books too. So, do you know what Deng Xiaoping said when Mao died about the Chinese economy back in 1976? He said, "Yo Chong Che Di," and that translates into, "This shit ain't working." They had to do something different. Pure socialism fails. So now they've made changes, and now next to the United States, China has more billionaires than any other country in the world. They move to the right. We've moved to the left with Social Security and Medicare and things like that. Education for all the people. Everybody's looking for the sweet spot, every country. Excuse my notes, but I'd either talk too much or forget what I'm doing without them. Now, you're going to hear some right-wing politicians that say that progressives or liberals want to make America into a socialist country. No, we don't. We want it to be somewhere in the middle where the poor people and the working people have their rights. Not a country for the billionaires. That's what we want. They say, I've heard Rush Limbaugh, bless his heart, he's dead now, burning in hell, but he said that somehow we wanted these rapists and killers and dope dealers here in America because they would vote for Democrats. No, we don't. We don't want killers. We don't want rapists. We don't want dope dealers. We don't want to take up all your guns. And we don't want Sharia law. And we don't want to outlaw Christmas. See my Christmas lights? They say all that stuff simply to distract you. You know, look over there. There's a man wearing a dress. Look at there. He's trying to go into girls' bathroom. When really what they're saying is, don't look at the numbers of where the money's going and who's getting rich and who's getting poor. What we want to do is we want to use the rewards of capitalism for all the people, not just the super rich. During the Gilded Age, huge fortunes were made. by the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Morgans, the Vanderbilts. And during that Gilded Era, when a lot of progress was made, but the working people were working in dangerous factories along with children and for starvation wages, while the Vanderbilts were building one castle wasn't enough. They had to build 2 or 3 castles. And so the injustice of the progressive era brought on old trust-busting, pro-worker Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, and during their reign, they shifted down the money to the people, workers' rights, the guys working, they got the children out of the factories. They even let women start voting. I mean, when the pendulum swings, it doesn't stop back in the middle, it swings a little bit further. So here we go again. Today they're putting taxes or tariffs on consumer goods. At the same time, they're cutting social programs. Look it up. So, and why are they cutting the social programs? So the super rich can get richer. Now, if the money was going to pay down the national debt, I wouldn't be talking now, because I'm very afraid of the national debt. It scares me to death. But if you will check it out, the national debt is not being paid down now with the big, beautiful bill. Check it out. Don't believe me, go check it out. Now, when the pendulum swings back, and it will, it's not going to stop in the middle, then hopefully it's going to be another time for working people, poor people, the people on the margins, special ed people, start getting their rights back, and the little guys. It'll be the time for the little guys again, I hope. So what I want to see every American child educated to the limit of their potential without the debilitating debt that often comes with it. And it's not just for that child, which that's good for the child to maybe raise him out of poverty. Instead of being a drug dealer, he's a dentist. That's good enough. But what I think makes America great is not the number of guns we got, it's the number of educated workers we have. People able to deal with the future, technology of the future. We're going to have to be on the ball, and you can believe those people in China, their children are getting that education. In Japan and South Korea, they're getting that education. We need to make sure our children also get it. I'd like to see the child of a working guy who's sick get the same medical care as Bezos's child or Elon's child. And I don't think that a person and a family who's worked their whole life, a husband and wife, should lose everything they've got if one of them has to go into a nursing home with Alzheimer's. And now that may be because of my age that I'm especially sensitive to that right now. So, and I could start naming all the programs that have been cut that I think is terrible. But one that for us Alabamians I think is particularly brings it into focus is they have cut, the big beautiful bill cut $70 million a year from the research budget of UAB in Birmingham, where they are working to cure cancer and Alzheimer's and other diseases. UAB is something to be proud of. It is one of the best research, medical research institutions in America. And so the big beautiful bill, we're cutting $70 million a year from it. from research to cure cancer, to me that seemed very short-sighted. And, you know, I hope karma, I sincerely hope that karma doesn't come. And people who says we don't need to waste money on curing cancer, well, karma can be a bitch. Now, before you jump on me, Elon Musk, his SpaceX, and Bezos, the Blue Origin, and anything that these super rich do to further science and technology, that's great. That's the way capitalism's supposed to work. Give them a tax credit for it. I think that's wonderful. And if you own a construction company or a plumbing company or air conditioning company, progressives aren't after you. You're our heroes. You're creating jobs. You're already paying enough taxes. Don't believe it if they say we want to raise your taxes. When you hear a progressive talk about raising taxes, not you guys, it's the super rich. And a lady buying a lobster with her food stamps, I don't care about that. If she, wants to eat a lobster this week instead of beans next week, let her make that decision. It's the Magnificent Seven, those 7 biggest corporations and these multinational corporations that pay 0 taxes because, sound like Bernie Sanders, don't it? That pay 0 taxes because of their congressmen they have in their pockets and their army of tax lawyers. They're the ones that we want to pay their fair share. And then let's start paying down the national debt. If they're paying their share, then we'll be more willing to make sacrifices to pay down the national debt. That needs to be done. And don't think we're, blind-eyed Democrats that don't see that. Yeah, we see it too. So I'm waiting for the new progressive era. I hope I live long enough to see it, and I believe I will, because hopefully we'll get back to valuing scientific research and taking care of the most pathetic people in our society and feeding the hungry, and let's get some money back over there to the starving people in Africa where the U.S. aid was cut. And let's start doing the right thing again. Let's be virtuous people. Let's get away from this hate, anger. Okay, I guess I got off script a little bit, but now you see what I believe. And if you don't believe that, you won't like my books, because all of my books, that's the underlying factor. That's what puts them together. But I think I've put it in there in a way that you're not going to feel preached at. You're not going to notice it. I'll use an example and show you instead of preaching at you about it. Maybe a few cases I do a little preaching, but I hope you'll give them a try. So that's the why of the Benton County trilogy and the 5 novels and the 1 book of short stories that make up the Benton County series. So there you go. I hope you'll give them a try.